I'm going to keep this video public. I'm going to try and keep it short. Not promising, though. I'm going to try and keep it tame so that way you can share it around and everybody, no matter how old you are or what walk of life you come from, you're not offended by the words that I'm using. You might be offended by the words that I'm saying, but that's a different story. This video has been sparked by the murder of Casey Goodson, a 23-year-old man in Columbus, Ohio, who was holding a sandwich. I want to start off with a little history lesson. Some of the first police, came about in Sparta. They were tasked with striking down slave rebellion, keeping the peasants where they were supposed to be, and protecting the property and businesses of the wealthy. In the United States, the police came from slave catchers. These were people who constantly would forgo morality, what little they had, in order to enforce the law. That's where the United States police come from. And, well, they followed in the footsteps of Sparta pretty soon after, because it was the police who were protecting businesses and protecting the property, a very important word, the property of the wealthy, until they decided, why are we paying the police to do this for us when we can have everybody pay the police to do this for us? So that's why now our tax dollars go toward police salaries. But those police salaries, for many people, are just people throwing their tax dollars to be murdered. Later on, the police would also become Unionbusters. So all of you working class people who love the cops regardless of what they do, there is a history in your oppression from the police as well. They would bust strikes, they would bust unions, they would kill the working class people who were trying to protest for fair wages and fair treatment and fair working conditions and shorter work days. The very history of the police is rooted in the oppression of the working class. And guess what? That also includes the police themselves. There's no reason why somebody who puts their lives on the line every day and makes an abysmal salary for it should have to risk their lives to protect the interest of billionaires who couldn't care less about them. But that's a whole different story. I want to talk about Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter, because somehow Blue Lives Matter became the antithesis of it, because Black Lives Matter is anti-police. It's anti-white supremacy. If the shoe fits, wear it, but it's not originally just a police thing, right? When we talk about Trayvon Martin, he was murdered by a civilian. Ahmaud Arbery was murdered by a civilian as well. A few civilians, as a matter of fact. And it wasn't until protests happened that those people were behind bars. George Zimmerman is still walking around free. That's why Black Lives Matter has to be said in the first place. Because as soon as a black person dies, everybody rushes to defend their murderer. They say, oh, well, they should, they smoked weed at one point, or they had a weapon at one point, or they have a criminal history. Guess what? It doesn't matter. Police work isn't supposed to be a guessing game. It's not supposed to be, oh, well, I'm going to shoot this person and then hope they had a criminal history afterwards. That's not how it's supposed to work. If you are a law and order person and you believe in the systems of this country, of the United States, then you should be upset too, because cops aren't supposed to be judge, jury, and executioner. They're supposed to arrest people and let the court system decide. Whether or not you believe in that system is a whole different story. That's not why I'm here. I will tell you that Blue Lives Matter is a waste of your breath, and it's a waste of your money. It's a waste of your money for all of the material that you're buying, all of the merchandise. Oh, I got this cool mask, I got this cool shirt, I got this cool hat. It's got an American flag that's black and white with a blue line across it. So not only are you promoting a police state, but you're also saying that police lives matter over the lives of civilians. Police are public servants, and you forget that. And another reason why it doesn't have to be said is because when a cop dies, they go down a hero, don't they? They put their lives on the line, they were killed in the line of duty, and the person who murdered them, they're going to pay for it. They're not going to be given paid leave. So guess what? You can believe that Blue Lives Matter, but you don't have to say it. You don't have to put up the lawn signs. You don't have to wear it around in a supermarket, because when you're around your black friends wearing that, or you're in a supermarket and a black person sees it, they're going to know that next time maybe it's them on the news after being murdered, you're going to be the one to rush and defend their murderer. There's a lot of counter arguments too, right? There's the, oh, well, if they didn't break the law, think about Breonna Taylor. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong boyfriend. And whether you can argue or not, whether or not she was involved in whatever was happening, the police were wrong in that case. They came up and they murdered a civilian. And I know plenty of white people who were in similar situations and were taken in alive. I know a couple of them pretty personally, don't I? Now, there's also if you listen to the police, Philando Castile listened to the police when he was pulled over. He was also a legal gun owner, just like Casey Goodson, 23-year-old man, 23-year-old kid, depending on how you look at it, right? Who was murdered. Philando Castile followed all the rules and he was still murdered by an undertrained cop. The NRA should have come to defend him. The NRA should be coming to Casey Goodson's defense now. I doubt they will. White people get killed too by the police. Okay, that's not good. Go back to the whole system thing, the law system. The police aren't there to kill people. They're there to protect people. It says on their cars to serve and protect. That's what they're supposed to be there for, but history shows us that's not the case. And also, if you say, oh, more white people get killed than black people and we're not complaining, one, you should be. Two, there's more white people in the United States. So when a black person dies, it's actually a higher percent of the black population that's being killed than the white percentage. What about black on black crime? You don't care about that. One, that's civilian on civilian crime. And two, it happens in all neighborhoods. If you're in a white neighborhood, guess what? The majority of white people are going to be killed by white people. If you're in an Asian neighborhood, Asians are going to be killing Asians. If you're in a black neighborhood, black people are going to be killing black people. Latinos, same thing. It's geography. It's not a matter of, oh, well, then you should be upset about black people killing black people. Guess what? I'm upset about civilians killing civilians in general, but they will get tried. They will go through the legal system. They won't be given paid leave. They won't have a bunch of people rushing to their defense saying that it was justified. You can't hold civilians to the same standards that you're holding government employees. There's also the argument of, oh, well, if we defund the police, who's going to save the children and the domestic abuse victims? Guess what? This isn't a TV show. The cops don't always show up right in the nick of time to save you. And get on the ground. Because we love those stories, right? We love seeing that on TV. We love seeing it in the movies. We love the propaganda that's fed to us. But that's not what happens. They come after. After something bad happens, that's when the cops get called. And if you do want to talk about domestic abuse victims, you do want to talk about child abuse victims, talk about Michael Valva, who slipped through the system because he was a cop. He was still able to retire with a pension. Hopefully that'll end up going to his kids and not to him. But he was still able to retire with his pension. He was not fired after murdering his own son. And abusing his other kids. There's also the don't tread on me hypocrisy that I love to talk about. Because there's so many people who will fly the Blue Lives Matter flag and then fly the don't tread on me flag as if they're the same thing. That's not what that's about. Don't tread on me means you are the government. You do not have a say in what I do as a private citizen. A government official, a police officer showing up to your house and murdering you, no trial or anything, that's literal treading on you. And you don't care about it now because, oh, it's just happened to the black people. They were probably criminals in the first place. It's going to be you. It will be. You keep giving power to the government. You keep giving power to law enforcement, letting them get away with whatever they want to get away with. It could be you. So don't you dare fly a don't tread on me and then talk about how much you love the government. How much you love government officials being able to murder people with impunity and getting put on paid leave. Or getting fired and then getting a job at another precinct right after, right? You, more than anyone, should be pro-police reform. If you love the cops, you should want every single police officer to be fully trained and to be a good person, to be an educated person. I know a cop personally who, after he got out of the academy, came to me and asked me for self-defense techniques. I studied martial arts between 12 years old and 25 years old. I know about de-escalating a situation so you don't have to use deadly force. People who have guns as part of their job should know that too. That's it. And this guy, one of my friends, he grew up in the suburbs and was placed to work out in Queens, placed to work out in the city. He told me within his first few months he almost pulled a gun on somebody because he just wasn't comfortable around them. They were coming up to him too fast. Is that what you want? You want some white kid raised in the suburbs to think that every black person he sees is going to be a threat? No. Law enforcement reform has to happen. And yes, defund the police has to happen. Does it mean we abolish all police? Depending on who you ask, yes. I'm not going to say that right now. I'm going to say there needs to be better training and there needs to be better vetting. Would you have a doctor operate on you who only gets 6 months of training? No. You wouldn't let anybody, you wouldn't trust any professional who only had 6 months of training. Even acting jobs, voiceover jobs that I apply for require you to have at least a year or two, sometimes 5 years worth of experience. And that's to do acting. So there's going to be protests. I hope there are protests, and there might be riots too. And I want you to think about this before you decide to condemn the rioting or the protesting or whatever it happens to be. I mean, you say, oh, well, the tyrant governors are going to lock us down, but they don't care about the rioters and they're spreading COVID. Guess what? They're in a case where they're probably going to die anyway, right? If it's not from COVID, they're going to be murdered by police. So what other choice do they have at that point? And to you, there's no right way to protest, right? If you kneel during the national anthem, all of a sudden you're disrespecting the troops, which definitely isn't the case. Okay? The troops aren't defending our freedom. They're going over and they're fighting for rich people and they're fighting for oil. Okay? No Iraqi people ever said, hey, Michael, I want to take your freedom. If our freedom was truly at stake, there would be boots on the ground here from a foreign country. They would be attacking us. My freedoms are fine. They're protesting a country, which, by the way, the national anthem itself was written by a guy who said that slaves who went to fight on the side of the British for their freedom should be murdered. There's an anti-slave thing. There's an anti-black thing. Everything in our country is built off of anti-blackness. And I mean it. I mean it. Read a book. Your version of America is not the same version that other people see. When you say, oh, these people died for their freedom, so they shouldn't protest, you know who died for their freedom? Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, both assassinated, Huey P. Newton, Nat Turner, John Brown. I know I'm taking it back a ways. Those people died for their freedom. Your freedom and their freedom are two very different things. And you might decide to say, oh, well, they're destroying property. That's not right. Guess what? What else are they supposed to do at this point? Also, I'd like to say that this country was built on protest, wasn't it? It was built on the destruction of property. You think the American Revolution was legal? You think they said, oh, can you please give the colonies their independence? No, they fought for it. They fought for it tooth and nail. So keep that in mind. People mean more than property. A building can be rebuilt. A person can't be resurrected. And if the lawmakers and politicians really cared that much about the property, you know what they would do? They would reform law enforcement. They would say, okay, fine, you got a point. We don't want any more buildings to burn, so let's let you guys, live a life where you don't have to worry about being murdered by the police. And you, as a private citizen, should also be worried. Do you want a cop showing up who's trigger happy? A cop who's nervous? A cop who spent 6 months training and then is fresh-faced and ready to take on the world? Or do you want somebody who knows what they're doing? Somebody who can keep a cool head? Somebody who will put their morality above the law? Because guess what? The law changes, right? You can't say, oh, it's against the law, blah, blah, blah. No, the law changes. The law is meant to represent the interests of the upper class. It's not meant to represent morality. It's not meant to represent what's right and what's wrong. Do you want someone to show up to supposedly protect you and help you who thinks that Subway started serving sandwiches in calibers instead of inches? That's what you got to think about. I wasn't short, but, the people who this is meant for, they don't really read too well, so hopefully you can watch the video. Rest in power, Casey Goodson.